Welcome to the first meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals for 2025. Sorry I'm late. I had difficulty navigating the parking meters with all the snow around them. I'm sure you did too. I would like to have seen that shoveled better by the city, but this is for the county today, so I'd like to welcome you, and if you would kindly call the roll.
Sure. Margaret Clements.
Here.
Skip Daly. Pamela Davidson.
Here.
Guy Loftman.
Here.
Dee Owens. Okay, so we have 3 members in person and a quorum.
Okay. Is there, if you would kindly introduce the evidence?
Sure. I'd like to introduce the following items into the evidence. The Monroe County Development Ordinance as adopted and amended. The Monroe County Comprehensive Plan as adopted and amended. The Monroe County Board of Zoning Appeals Rules of Procedure as adopted and amended, and the cases that were legally advertised and scheduled for a hearing on tonight's agenda.
Is there a motion to approve?
I move that we approve the introduction of evidence as enumerated.
Second that?
Okay. Motion yes is a motion to approve the introduction of evidence. Pamela Davidson.
Yes.
Guy Loftman.
Yes.
Margaret Clements.
Yes.
Motion is approved 3-0.
Is there a motion to approve the agenda as posted and amended?
I move to approve tonight's agenda as posted and amended.
Second?
Motion yes is a motion to approve tonight's agenda as posted. Guy Loftman.
Yes.
Margaret Clements.
Yes.
Pamela Davidson.
Yes.
Okay, agenda is approved 3-0.
There are 4 sets of minutes, and we can either review these individually or collectively. It will depend upon the motion made by my colleagues.
I move that we approve the 4 enumerated minutes collectively.
Second?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes August 7th, August 28th, October 2nd, and November 6th, 2024. A vote yes is a vote to approve all 4 sets of minutes. Margaret Clements?
Yes.
Pamela Davidson?
Yes.
Guy Loftman?
Yes.
Motion is approved 3-0.
Okay, great. Is there any administrative business you have for us this evening?
I do want to just announce at the very beginning a note that we are operating under the new county development ordinance. So some of the references that you'll see throughout tonight's agenda, for instance, the environmental constraints overlay is changing in the number of the chapter number. So that's chapter 823. There will also be a few other changes throughout that we'll point out to you, but pretty much consistent for your review. The design standards or development standards, variance standards are still the same as use variance.
Well, thank you for bringing that to our attention, and we look for your guidance throughout the meeting, as you always are so good to do. So the first item under old business is VAR dash, oh yes, Mr.
If I may.
Yes,
With regard to that first item.
Yes.
You heard that last month.
Yes.
It was a split vote, I believe 2-2. We're here prepared to go on tonight, but I also recognize there are only 3 of you tonight.
Yes.
Having already been through a meeting with a split vote, I'll just raise the question whether you would believe it to be appropriate to continue this to next month, and the expectation we have 4 or 5 members of that one as opposed to just 3 of you. An action vote is going to take all 3 of you, obviously, one way or the other. And so we're not asking for a continuance. We're ready to present, but I also understand there may be a practical reason to continue just based on the numbers
I
issue.
think that's a very fair request. And so has anyone been inclined to change their mind from the last meeting?
Frankly, I may be. Okay, when I read the package, I realized there are things I don't know, and who may know more about some things than I do. It's always shocking.
And I actually don't, I know you asked some questions last time about some additional information, but beyond that, I actually don't recall. I wasn't here, and I don't remember who did what, and I'm not trying to suggest that we ought to count noses to.
I voted no.
Just to get 3 out of 3 to one way or the other is going to be required for any action tonight.
For any action.
And so,
it's technically a little late to continue it, but if you want to move to continue it, I understand.
We have no continuous entitlements remaining,
Yes.
so that's why I'm raising the issue. So
I think it would be best to continue it
Does
the fairest
staff
to the client.
Does
Yeah.
staff have any viewpoint on this matter?
No, I mean, if when you hear it, since it has been continued so many times with different members, I think it's best to have as many people present
I
at the
agree.
time, so we don't have to continue to hear it
Yeah,
multiple times.
that's,
So is there a motion to continue? We'll have two new members in,
May I make a comment, though? Because you're coming back next time, if this all works out, there's still a few things missing, which staff will be working with them on. Is that correct? There, when I read the report, there were a few holes, and can those be?
The report has been published, so
Yes.
the petitioner can absolutely read the latest update and try to fill in what staff has pointed out.
That makes me very happy. That makes all of our time much more productive.
so thank you, and I,
I probably appreciate not sitting through a petition that ultimately doesn't reach a decision. So-
and also you'll have a better listening field. So is there a motion to continue?
Upon the request of the petitioner, I move to continue. Wait a minute, let me get my glasses.
It's VAR 24-26.
That's exactly what I was going to
And
say.
I'm going to second that. So if you would call the roll, Jackie?
Sure.
So the motion is to continue VAR-24-26, which is the Hubli Eco Area 1 12% slope encroachment to Chapter 823. A request to continue it to the next Board of Zoning Appeals meeting, which is February 5th, 2025. A vote yes is a vote to continue it to February 5th. Guy Loftman,
Yes.
Pamela Davidson,
Yes.
Margaret Clemens.
Yes.
Okay, that motion is approved 3-0.
Okay. It's good to see you this year, Mr. Carmen.
Is it
Is this it?
this?
2440, it's this one. No? No, this is not it.
24, 26, this one.
Okay, 24.
Right there.
Okay,
Yeah, that's it.
thank you. Have a great evening.
Thank you, be safe.
Here's
Thank
one.
you.
Mike,
safe.
here's another one.
Thank. Okay, so we're moving on to new business, VAR 24-47, the Cassidy Eco Area 1 12% slope variance to Chapter 823. And I believe that Ms. Crecelius will review this case with us.
Yes, thank you, Margaret. So the property is located in Salt Creek Township, Section 33. So this location map, because it's on the very far eastern edge of the county, it's kind of zoomed out, so I put a big old arrow to show where the parcel is. Just zoomed in any further, it was hard to get some context. So to get to the petition site, you do have to drive into Brown County to get to this area. So the property is zoned residential 1. Pictometry view of the site. So it is platted within the Salt Creek Realty subdivision, which is a pretty old subdivision. It's platted as Lot 10. It's 0.94 acres. So is the 1967 plat of the property. This subdivision is served by a private package plant. So it is on sewer, so there's no concern about septic location or needing an amount of area for septic. So the petitioner has applied for one variance from Chapter 823, which is the Environmental Constraints Overlay Chapter, the new chapter number 823. So the property is located within Area 1, which still has that 12% slope restriction for land disturbance and vegetation removal. This variance request encompasses 4 standards from that eco area. It's all nested under one variance request. So the petitioners are interested in developing the property with a single-family residential home. Forward a little bit. So on screen is their site plan with the site contours, the proposed location of the home and impervious area of the driveway in blue, and then a couple of yellow shaded areas. So in order to develop this property, we have a built-in waiver ability when an applicant applies for a building permit. So we have a waiver when you apply for a building permit to develop a new property within eco that doesn't have enough area that meets the criteria of the chapter. So the chapter states you have to have 1 acre of buildable area. So they'd have to have 1 acre of 12% slope or less. The petitioners are not in the position to apply for a building permit at this time, so a waiver cannot apply yet. They don't want to purchase the property until they know they can build. So, a little bit of a conundrum. So they've chosen to pursue this variance. So on screen is their proposed home location, and then those yellow areas that are highlighted are the only areas on site that are buildable. So that excludes the setback, and that excludes areas that are above 12%. So those 3 little yellow areas are the only areas that are 12% and under. It's about 1,800 square feet. Now, that may be doable if it was all contiguous, but as you can see, it's spread out. Other than that, the property it is fairly even, but it exceeds 12% slope. So the regulations that we are looking at, the first is 823-5, number 1, which is stating that there's no land disturbance for construction of building, driveways, roads, parking lots, utilities can occur on slopes greater than 12%. Number 2 states that there shall be no disturbance of natural vegetation beyond 12%. So staff has put together just a couple of points. So we, after review, we determined that the site is greatly constrained by slopes, greater than 12%, and that there are only 3 separate individual areas of slope that are less than 12% that total that's 1,600 square feet. The next 2 points is number 3, which states that there's a maximum residential density that shall be allowed, shall be 1 unit per 5 acres. Now, if we were creating a new subdivision in the eco, this would apply, and you would have to have a 5-acre lot. But this lot has been a legal lot of record since 1967. So technically, a variance would be needed to be able to build 1 dwelling unit on a lot less than 5 acres. The 5th point is that each dwelling unit shall have at least 1 acre of total contiguous buildable area of land. The property has 0.94 acres. Again, it was platted in 1967 and has sat there undeveloped, owned by the current property owner. They live adjacent, and they've held on to the lot for some years, and they've been ready to sell now. So the petitioners are interested in purchasing the property, but like I mentioned a moment earlier, they're not in a place to apply for a building permit where they might be eligible for the waiver. So I'm going to run through a few site photos. This is looking at off of East Elkins Road, looking onto East Court. So we are looking west. This corner where the petition sign, that is part of the petition site. That is kind of looking north up Elkins Ridge Road. So now I've driven down East Court, which runs west towards the lake. So now I'm looking back east at the corner of the property. So there's kind of a driveway entrance that's been pre-existing, that's been there for a while. And then it opens up kind of into a clearing. So this area is actually not where they're proposing to build. It's a next little clearing up, but this is the original driveway. So when they go to apply for that building permit, they'll have to get an approved driveway permit from the highway department. They'll tell them if they can keep this one or remove it. As a question for another day, but just to kind of orient you with the property. So that's looking on site. There's a property marker flagged with pink tape on the bottom left corner. So that's the southwest corner of the property. So looking up the hill, this would be, you can see a property marker with pink tape kind of towards the center. This is an area where the home is proposed to be built. So overall, you can't really tell with the vegetation. the slope varies between those small areas of 12% and varies up to about 15%. Only towards the north side of the property does it get steep slopes down. So they're not proposing disturbance on any slopes greater than 15%. But 15% is regulated, even 15% is not allowed, so. So upon review, staff does recommend approval of the variance request from Eco Area 1, Chapter 823. We are approval because the proposed building footprint as submitted would qualify for the waiver from the slope per Chapter 823-6, which lays out the standards of how a waiver could be granted. Just as a note, this variance will be very specific to this footprint. If there has to be changes in the future to that location based on design or complications, it might not apply. So before they applied for this variance, we did encourage them to, be confident in where they're building the proposed footprint at least would go. So staff does recommend approval. Does anybody have any questions?
My colleagues have questions for staff?
My only question is on their design, as you've said, be careful where you pick your building site. That's what you've just said a minute ago. Does it minimize harm to the slope to the greatest extent possible, given the fact that the land, it really has no buildable contiguous spot?
We believe this is a very considerate location. It's approximate to East Court. Yeah, we believe this satisfies the criteria for the standards of approval.
Thank you.
I have a question. If we approve this, would they have the freedom to build elsewhere on the lot or just in the spot designated? Has a survey been done, or how do we control for that, so to speak?
They did survey the property.
Yes.
That is the document we are referencing
Okay.
that they used as material for application.
Yes.
The amount of flexibility, if a complication occurred and they needed to change, I'm not sure if we have much flexibility there.
No, if they choose to propose a building location that's outside of the area that they're getting approval for the variance tonight, or they expand upon that, we would have to review that under the ordinance. So if they don't qualify for the exception, which Ann alluded to, there is criteria now in the CDO for an exception to the eco, then they would be back here for another variance.
Yes, and that is about 10%, is that it? 10% outside of what they had proposed, or?
No, it's not a percent based, so I'll actually pull it up. I think it might be helpful to
Yeah, it would
to
be
review that.
helpful.
Sure.
Thank you. She's going to pull something up for us. Okay. Yeah.
The county development ordinance was adopted on December 18th, 2024, which is what we're utilizing to review any new applications, such as building permits or site plans. Variances applied for tonight under the CDO would be able to proceed if they follow the same site plan. But different changes, let me go through the list of exceptions and criteria for those exceptions. So again, as Ann stated in her presentation, they opted to not submit an actual building permit application prior to consideration of this variance. So we're just looking at a rough estimate of the building location. But this is some of the standards that we can consider in approving an exception for a different building site. So such as all buildable area should be accessible without slope disturbance on the property. or all buildable area accessible without slope disturbance on the property shall be utilized prior to encroachment into the steep slopes to the extent possible. So if they were to propose the building site away from all of the buildable area, we would say, no, you need to move closer to the road access because there is some buildable area on the site. You must maximize that area. House footprint not exceeding 2,500 square feet in total. We get this question a lot at the staff level of, well, how much square footage of a house can I get for the exception to qualify? So we decided that would be helpful to at least put a number on it. That doesn't mean we have to approve it if it's 2,500 square feet. It's just a number that gives people a range to know maybe they should start considering a second story or keeping it to a certain amount outside of the buildable. And the site design shall minimize tree removal, minimize driveway length, and incorporate all required tree protections. And lastly, all development proposed, including all necessary infrastructure, shall be compact and formed to the extent possible. So we don't want to see the septic system, 500 feet away from the building site. Not typically feasible, but just as an example.
If they decided to go up to 2,500 square feet as varying from what we see before us here tonight, would any of that additional square footage fall in a slope above 15%?
So what's the square footage of their
It's
current home?
1850.
1850. So if they're utilizing
Would be about, again, a little bit
18.
less than half as large.
right, so if they were to get a variance tonight, and let's say that building footprint changes when they apply for an application, we would be looking at it as if the variance was not applicable because it doesn't match. But if they're able to maximize the buildable area on the site and then extend outside of that, and that total is 2,500 square feet, that could technically fall under this exception, but they have to meet A through D on the screen. It's not one only. It's all of them is that we're considering
I
together.
do see that west of the proposed site plan, there is some buildable area that is in the 12% or below, but it's still not quite, well, I don't know. So, but I don't see myself with my inexperienced eye, and I don't see anywhere that if they had increased the footprint of the house by half, so to speak, that it would exceed the 15%. But can you better tell with your more experienced eye if the footprint of that house were to exceed, go up to 2,500, if they would be in any of the slope above 15%? Can you tell by looking or no?
So the proposal before you is already in the slope. So in
Yes.
that location at 1,800 or so square feet, and the petitioner could confirm the exact footprint shown,
Yes.
they already need this variance or to apply to see if they can apply for an exception. Anne's exhibit that she has, if you want to share your screen again on the screen, might be helpful as well. So do you want to explain
Yeah.
that one more time?
But if you see, if they were to qualify for that exception of under the 2,500 square foot rule, I don't see myself with my inexperienced eye that an increased footprint of the house would place this in a slope that is steeper than 15%.
I see. They have a little bit outside of the 15 and 12 right now, just the northern, northwestern piece. But you're correct. If they were to expand the footprint, if they continue to go north, we would say that doesn't qualify for the exception because
see.
they need to maybe
see.
extend east-west.
Okay, that helps me because these are new rules, and it helps me to know how you to operationalize them. So thank you very much. So we'll turn now to the petitioner or the petitioner's representative, and if you would kindly come up and sign in on the podium, and then I'll swear you in, and then you'll have 15 minutes to speak to us. combined. If you both plan to speak, or do you both plan to speak? Okay, great. Because, and if you would sign in then as well, and then I'll swear you both in at the same time. And I'm going to go ahead and swear you in while he's signing in. Do you both swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yes, okay, thank you. And what is your name, ma'am?
I'm Ashley Fletcher with Davis Homes.
Okay, Ms. Fletcher, if you would kindly present to us your request for variance, and you have 15 minutes combined. Okay.
As I said, I'm Ashley Fletcher with Davis Homes, located at 3950 Priority Way South Drive, Suite 210, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46240. I'm here with Paul Carroll, legal counsel for Davis Homes, and the petitioners, Mr. and Mrs. Cassidy, in the back. The property address is 9006 East Court, Nashville, Indiana. The variance is VAR-24-27. We will be seeking a new common address when the building permit application is processed. We believe staff has done an excellent job in representing the facts for this case. We welcome any questions that the board may have this evening. We do ask that the board adopt staff's recommendation for approval and look forward to building a beautiful home in your community.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Do my colleagues have questions?
It makes sense you don't have a building permit because you don't know if you can build on it or not. But Margaret's question about the size of the house, do you think it will exceed or be in the vicinity of the drawing we have in front of us?
Absolutely. I don't foresee any changes to that at this point unless we have a recommendation from highway, for driveway permit or something like that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Is this limitation to the footprint shown on the drawings a commitment that would be binding on the petitioner?
Yes, so since, I'll just wait for a second. So the visual you see on the screen, the only areas that they are able to build on this property by right are the highlighted yellow areas. So you can tell that breaks up the two pieces of buildable area, if you will.
Yes.
So if they were to deviate from this red box that they're drawing the house footprint, it would already require a variance, most likely, unless they wanted to fit within that highlighted yellow box, or they would have to apply for the exception. So what we'll be doing is when we get a building permit application, we'll be comparing their building permit application site plan to this site plan. Mm-hmm. And if there's deviations, then we need to go back to the ordinance and possibly follow up that they need a different variance.
So if we approve this, we are limiting the building to the red box. Is that right?
Well, Jackie would review, see if it meets the site plan. If it doesn't, then she would see if she could apply the waiver still. And then if the waiver cannot still be satisfied, then she would say you would need to pursue a variance.
But by approving tonight's variance with this site plan attached, the only by right consideration of the house footprint that you're approving would have to match this same red box.
Yeah, just wanted to make sure I had that clear.
Okay.
And also, this building site matches where the existing driveway is. It just extends it back into the property, so it makes sense in terms of the frontage of the property and the access from the road.
We are not utilizing the existing driveway. It'll actually be pushed back further. If you look in the drawing, the blue box that she has represented there is the garage. It's a front-load garage, so the driveway would just extend to East Court directly.
So are there further questions for?
Aye.
Okay, so what we'll do now is we'll hear from the public, and if there are people who are speaking against the petition, you'll have an opportunity to rebut what they say for about 5 minutes. But if there is no opposition, we'll just move forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for coming down from Indianapolis. Okay, are there members of the public who are in favor of this petition and wish to speak in favor of it, either here in the room or online? You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Okay, are there members of the public who are in opposition to this petition? If so, please come to the podium here in the Nat Hill room, or if there's anyone online who would like to speak in opposition, please raise your virtual hand. We see none. So we come back to us for further discussion and or a motion.
I'd also like to just clarify with the petitioner, the blue box, the site plan we have says that that is concrete, just like a pad. That would actually be located in the front setback. So if that would not be included in this variance.
You're correct. That's the concrete pad. It's not the garage. It's,
Pad.
yeah, in
Okay.
the private sidewalk.
Okay,
I apologize.
then the footprint of the concrete pad would be part of the eco, but yes, okay, thank you.
It's not a structure, so it's allowed in the setback.
Great, is.
Okay, so
I move to approve variance 2447A, Lori and Mike Cassidy, 9,000 in Monroe County. The grounds that it is not injurious to the public health, that it would not negatively affect the use and value. Minimum variance necessary is what has been presented to us.
I'll second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded to approve VAR-24-47A, which is the Cassatee Eco Area 1 12% slope encroachment to Chapter 823. There's been a motion and a second to approve the variance, which includes the site plan submitted by the petitioner with the red and blue boxes shown for areas of disturbance into the 12% and 15%. A vote yes is a vote to approve the variance as presented. Guy Loftman,
Yes.
Pamela Davidson,
Yes.
Margaret Clements.
yes.
Motion is approved 3-0.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, and thank you for working so well with our staff. We appreciate that. And Mr. and Mrs. Cassidy, good luck. I hope that you do build the house, and we look forward to hopefully, driving by it and seeing your beautiful home. Thank you. Thank you. The next item is 3 variances, VAR-24-48A, B, and C, concerning the Mitchell Tourist Home or Cabin Use Variance to Chapter 811, the Cabin Design Standards Variance to Chapter 811-6J, and the Mitchell Front Yard Setback Variance to Chapter 805-1. And this concerns 2 parcels totaling .70 plus or minus acres in Benton North Township. And that's at 9001 East South Shore Drive. Now, Ms. Crecelius, if you would kindly review this with us, we'd be grateful.
Absolutely. So I'm going to break this up into 2 parts. So for the first part, we're just going to look at A,
Okay.
and that's the use variance.
Okay.
So as you stated, 2 parcels, 2 lot of record developed with a single-family dwelling. So we're located in Benton Township on Lake Lemon. The property does not have lake frontage directly. So this use variance request is to establish a tourist home or cabin at 9001 East South Shore Drive on .7 acres. So per the petitioner's letter, the structure is currently used as a vacation home and an occasional rental. The existing dwelling is constructed as a 2-family dwelling, so that is split horizontally. It's defined under Chapter 850 as a building on a single lot containing 2 dwelling units, each of which are separated by the other by an unpierced wall. So the petitioner has been in contact with the planning department since November 2022. Staff provided them at that time that the property, with information that the property was not a legal tourist home or cabin. The petitioner intends to make this use compliant with the CDO by pursuing this use variance process. So a tourist home or cabin definition has not changed too much in our new ordinance, but I'd like to go over it again. So tourist home or cabin is defined as a residential structure leased under a short-term lodging agreement to accommodate 8 or fewer guests that are furnished to the public. Only one tourist home or cabin is permitted per legal lot of record, and the owner or operator does not typically reside on the property. A short-term lodging agreement is defined as an agreement under which rooms are provided for a fee, rate, or rental and are occupied for overnight lodging or habitation purposes for a period of less than 30 days. A long-term lodging agreement is a lease that is 30 days or longer. Or just a helpful note, let's say a long-term lodging agreement, that is just a residential use and does not require any additional permission other than required by the ordinance. So you have a single family residential home, you could rent it without any kind of business permit or something like that, as long as it's greater than 30 days. When it's under 30 days, short-term lodging agreement, that's where this tourist home or cabin use comes in. So on screen is the petitioner's letter from Chelsea Moss with Abram Moss Design Group. This was included in your packet, so I will not keep this on screen for too long. So on screen is a pictometry view from 2024. So there are 2 separate structures on site. Couple of views. So currently the home is in a kind of in a state of mid-construction repair. So it's got some, we'll see in a couple images that the house is kind of being worked on. So here is the front of the property looking west. And then just before we get into more photos, on screen is a boundary survey that was done, I believe, just a couple years ago, 2023. So it is 2 separate lots of record. The structure is built over the middle lot line. In the future, planning would likely ask for these properties to be combined in order for a structure to meet setbacks. You can't have a setback go through the property, through a dwelling, through a structure. So just getting you oriented, pretty large lot actually for the Lake Lemon area. So it's got 2 driveways, which we'll look at here. We have, here's the front of the home with a concrete driveway coming off of South Shore Drive. On the west side of the home, a deck, second entrance that's under construction. There is another gravel drive that leads around to the back of the house. Where there's that second entrance. So the house, there's one dwelling on top, one dwelling on bottom. This home has existed for quite some time, so it could have been converted 40 years. It may have been a single family. That could have been a conversion. Maybe they developed it 40 years ago as 2 individually, unknown, but that's the way it exists now. We'll see a couple more photos. The property is on septic, so you can see the garage on the eastern side to the back. And then looking north at the dwelling and the garage. So a little bit about the residential 1 zoning district. I've got the district character and the purpose on screen. So this area is defined as it's being used for existing, possibly non-conforming, recorded single-family dwelling residential subdivisions and lots of record. So a lot of our SR suburban residential lots, this is what it was rezoned to. So if you remember, it's pretty similar in character for the zones. And the purpose of the district is to accommodate existing substandard subdivision development and lots and to permit the build out of single-family dwelling residential uses on those lots. On screen, I have a picture of The uses for the residential one zoning district, the primary residential uses that are permitted are things like single-family detached, residential storage structure, and then we've got uses under public and semi-public uses, personal service uses, and some agricultural uses, along with conditional and accessory that are listed. I'm going to catch up just a second. So something that will come up is the petitioner purchased this property from an adjacent property owner who runs multiple tourist home or cabins in the area. At that time, they were under the impression that it had been used as a tourist home or cabin, that it was what we call pre-existing non-conforming, or sometimes in slang, a grandfathered use. Within chapter, it's a new chapter 844, and this existed under the prior ordinance. We have the burden of establishing status, which means it is the applicant's burden to prove pre-existing non-conforming if we don't have enough information. So it is on the property owner to provide some kind of documentation to the planning director that the use has been continuous. It's been that way since before January 1, 1997. So 844-5, the burden of establishing legal pre-existing non-conforming use status rests on the property owner or party seeking to continue the non-conforming use or occupancy. And then jump over 3 points here, which states you must prove of construction of the building or structure and the date that the use was established. And so that would need to be before January 1, 1997. B is the continuous operation of the non-conforming use, which means that that use cannot be discontinued for more than 6 months. Within Chapter 844, discontinue for 6 months or more, that status is lost. And then point number C is that such other proof and may be deemed necessary by the planning director, which may include utility bill history, leasing information, affidavit from the property owner, employee records, tax filings, or other similar records. So we have not received documentation any documentation like that from before January 1, 1997. So the planning director is involved with determining whether it's pre-existing non-conforming. So we established back in 2022 that this was not eligible. It does not have that status. So, and that is why the variance was presented as an option. So just want to be really clear about those dates, because I know that sometimes that comes up, and there's been a lot of discussion with that with this property. So if you have questions, please let me know. So the staff recommendation upon review for this use variance is to recommend denial of the use variance to allow a tourist home or cabin, with the reasoning being that there is no substantial evidence that the property cannot be utilized under the existing permitted use of a single-family dwelling in the residential one zoning district, and therefore does not meet the criteria of Chapter 841-4E, which are your standards of a use variance. That's what's listed above. And in addition, the property does not meet the standards for a tourist home or cabin as listed in the following report in VAR 24-48B. It's gonna keep going. So before we go into discussion, if this use variance is approved, the BZA will hear the following design standard variances from those standards for a tourist home or cabin. If the use variance is denied, VAR 2448B is null. The petitioner would not be able to rent the space under the short-term lodging agreement. That being said, 48C is a request from the front setback for the existing dwelling. It could still be granted. It would be needed if the tourist home is approved and the tourist home standards are approved. We would have to consider approval for the front yard setback, but that could be done either way because the existing home is built in the front yard setback. So that was a lot of information.
That's
Do you
a
have
lot.
questions?
It's a lot of complication, a lot going on.
My question for staff, is a short-term rental require owner occupant or no?
It does not require that. We have a whole new use under our new ordinance that is an owner-occupied rental. So this specifically, the owner is not there.
But it could it qualify as a short-term rental without owner occupancy? I know the rules on tourist homes or cabins, but what's the distinction then for short-term rentals?
My understanding is that the short-term rental agreement definition is more broad. It would also include, it's an umbrella that would include uses like a hotel where you have stays under 30 days. Beyond that, under that umbrella of short-term rental agreement, there would be tourist home or cabin and is it called owner-occupied short-term rental is the new name? Yeah, so tourist home or cabin specifically would not mean that there's not a manager or a property owner on site. Does that help?
It's because short-term rentals are happening all over, and we all know this with those entities. I'm just trying to get my head around, are they permissible or not under, and does somebody need a variance to offer that, as it seems to be happening so often?
There are locations within the county. There are zoning districts where this is a permitted use with standards. There's zoning districts where it's conditional.
I see.
But within this zoning district, it's not permitted at all.
Well, that's the answer. Thank you.
I'll also mention that tourist home or cabin is the same terminology we used in the last ordinance, and due to the state's legislation stating that any new ordinance after 2018, they cannot start regulating short-term rentals. We didn't want to change that name, even though we could have come up with maybe an easier name. Also, tourist home or cabin, typically those applicants do not have the same owner address. So it's not just that the owner is present, but they don't utilize this home as their primary residence. They have another home. Yeah.
Thank you.
So I think this is pretty obvious. If they lived there, this would be permitted automatically.
Yes, short-term rental, owner occupied, is permitted with standards in this zoning district. If they meet the standards, then they could get the use without a variance.
It may seem a little odd to me that if you live there, you can rent it out, but if you don't live there, if you live in the top, you can rent out the bottom. If you don't live there, you can't rent out either, short term.
Except that the purpose of the residential zoning district is to make sure that it doesn't just become a ghost town. You know, that people live there
Right.
and year-round, and that it's
Right.
not just vacation property.
Yeah, that's why this makes sense, and I
Yes.
hadn't quite figured out why it makes sense. And I'm gonna, a lot of new stuff. I'm gonna be on a steep learning curve here. Helping me grasp why that's an important.
And if this, I know the applicant, I think they live in proximity to this home, but note that if you grant a use variance, the applicant could sell the property. It could still be a tourist home for anyone. We get a lot of out-of-state folks that do tourist home or cabin uses as well.
Could it become a hotel?
Hotel motel is a different use. So if
Okay.
they have more than the number of bedrooms or guests, then it's not going to meet this use. But
Okay.
they stated in the letter, I think it's 2 rooms, or is it?
But I mean, if it goes, you know, if it changes hands and down the road with this approval, would the lot be usable, as a hotel.
The zoning district wouldn't
Okay.
permit that use.
Okay, okay. So with that being said, I presume that Ms. Moss, you're here to represent? Okay, so if you would kindly come to the podium and sign in, and then I'll swear you in. I see a hand raised. Mr. Mackel, we will recognize you after the petitioner presents their case, and then we'll call for participation from the public, just to let you know. They have 15 minutes to present their petition to us. So if you both would kindly raise your right hand, and do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Mitchell. Please proceed.
Hello, Board of Zoning Appeals planners and online spectators and persons here. I'm Monica Mitchell. I'm the owner of 9001 East South Shore Drive. I'm requesting the vacation tourist home variance. My variance is VAR 24-48. A little about myself. I'm a lifelong Bloomington resident. I grew up south of town near Bachelor Middle School. I went to Bloomington High School South, and I got my nursing degree a very long time ago from IU. Bloomington was a great place to grow up, and I remember having many fun-filled days and having a lot of fun at Lake Lemon, where this house is located on the lake. You have a lake view, and it's adjacent to the City of Bloomington property. And my partner, Rich Fig, and I have been working on the house, and he's been supporting me in our dream to have this property that we've had for almost 3 years be a vacation home and a rental, and something that we too can utilize at times. We're choosing to do some work, so that's why we want to get this variance, because what we do to the home would be different if we get the vacation rental versus what we do if we don't get the vacation rental. Due to the property not being my primary residence, I'm unable to take advantage of the CDO's ability to make your own home a vacation rental. That's why I have to get the variance. It would have been nice if I was going to live there. I could have just done it myself. So I'd like to thank Anne for all of her help since 2022, helping me figure out a lot of this, because I called her and I'm like, hey, my listing has commercial housing on it. She's like, that doesn't matter. And I said, well, it's been a rental for a long time. She's like, it doesn't matter. You need the variance. This cabin was built in the 50s. It had several additions made to it over the years, and I've owned it since 2022. It sits on the 0.35 acre lot with another 0.35 acre lot. So it has lots of parking. Like Ann said, it has 2 different driveways, so it wouldn't be a burden to have lots of cars there to the neighbors, or wouldn't have to have any on-street parking. And it also has a large 2-car attached garage and a lot of space. From what I understand, I would have been able to have the grandfathering for this property under chapter, I think it was 803, but apparently I missed that by about 7 months, because the previous owner bought it in July of 1997 instead of January of 1997. So 7 months is kind of why I'm here. But it does have a good history of the commercial housing. I provided a listing and tax returns. My person I bought it from, she owns many rental properties around the lake, and she actually has several vacation rentals, and she was very kind and supportive of this process for me, and she provided her tax returns and a listing for the rentals when she rented it. So that helped create some of the history for the property. I would ask the board to consider the long amount of time this property did meet the criteria and maybe forgive the 6 or 7 months, but it didn't. One important factor in this property is how close it is to the Porthole. The Porthole is a restaurant very popular to Lake Lemon, and the road, the community road that goes to the Porthole dock is right behind this property. We get people walking, like sometimes hundreds of people a day walking behind this property from the Porthole dock to the Porthole. So it really lends itself well as a vacation rental. A lot of people would love a place to stay near there. The bands always ask to stay. A lot of the vacation rentals are full most of the year, and a lot of people say that they would like to have a place and that their places are full. Do I have any place? And I have to say no, unfortunately, I don't. But I'd love to say yes. My goal with wanting this tourist home designation is twofold. One is to rent it to these vacation goers and these lake goers at times of our choosing. And at times of our choosing allows us to still utilize the property for our family and have family gatherings. We have 7 children and lots of grandchildren, and we could rent this as a full-time rental, but you can't just go to a full-time rental and say, hey, can I have my property back for the weekend? And 2 would be to allow our children and grandchildren to have use of the property when it's not being used as a vacation rental. And as many of you know, property taxes have almost doubled in recent years, and having the income from a short-term rental while still being able to utilize it for our own family would be very beneficial. Lake Lemon also had a special assessment, and our taxes now, we have a Lake Lemon Conservancy tax that provides dredging and lake maintenance, and so that has increased our cost. The tourist home variance had some concerns from the planners, but Lake Lemon has very few full-time residents. We have I think maybe 2 people on South Shore that live there full-time. Most of the properties are owned by people from other counties and other areas, and they don't live on the lake full-time. So the lake already has sort of a seasonal feel, and a vacation rental would go along with some of that use. The owner that we bought this from, the one who she owns a vacation rental right in front of this property, and she rents it out quite often, and she has provided wonderful letters of support, and we've gotten wonderful support from all the neighbors. Anyone we contacted has given us their support. Which we find at the lake to be very friendly that way. Even though I would have a vacation rental and she would have a vacation rental, we're not in competition with each other, we're more in a partnership, and lots of people want to stay at the lake. The fact that this home was historically a Lake Lemon rental with lake access makes it a fantastic tourist home, and many others around the lake use their homes as vacation rentals themselves. I provided a map with the area just to show. I think that Anne may have printed that off. It just kind of shows, I don't know if you got a copy of the map, but it just shows how many properties around ours are rentals and vacation rentals, and it's most of them. My hope is that the board would see the favorable nature of this request and consider the many boxes that this property ticks off that make it a great vacation rental. The many surrounding homes that are of like kind, that's a great one. The nature of Lake Lemon as a seasonal destination with many vacation homes and vacation rentals, and the need for more. The desire for me as a property owner to have the option to have it rented not on a yearly basis, but on a short-term basis allows me to use the property at times of our choosing. The wonderful support of my neighbors and the immediate surrounding businesses with vacation variances of their own. They all offered their support. The fact that our lake can support and actually needs more places for people to stay when they visit makes this a beneficial thing for the area. I have lots of friends that are having weddings and they need places for their family to stay. And the fact that we'll fix it up better and make it look better will definitely help property values. And the fact that we almost met the grandfathering guidelines, I'm hoping you'll take that into consideration as well. Thank you so much for your time and consideration and listening.
Thank you, Ms. Mitchell. And it's good to see you, Ms. Moss. We'll hear from you.
Yes,
We look forward to hearing
and my wonderful engineer, Chelsea.
Yes.
Good evening. So Monica touched on a lot of the points tonight, but I just kind of want to point out on a little more on the technical side some of the items. It's a 2-unit dwelling. Okay, those are allowed in the zone, but they're not super common up in the Lake Lemon area. Most of those dwellings up there are single family, and a lot of them are used as short-term rentals. Specifically, the location of this lot. It is not a lakefront property. It's not up there on the water. It is actually cut off, and it's in this nice little square with the porthole, a set of apartments, and this unit. It's not set up that it's in the middle of a whole bunch of single-family residences. The closest single-family residence to this location is about 60 feet away, based on Ann's map. And that is actually one of the property owners we have a supporting letter from. He's in favor of the continued use of this property as a short-term rental. The septic is set up for a 3-bedroom home. It's got 3 bedrooms in it. That is 2 on the main level and 1 on the lower. The unit is set up with separate exterior entrances and separate parking. It's been used this way for decades. So we're not asking for anything new. We just want to continue using it. Technically, it is outside of what could have been grandfathered and handled by staff, and that's why we're here from a variance standpoint. The fact that we have so much support from the neighbors really shows that this is the accepted use. It's the expected use. It's what's been happening up there. Just was unknowingly happening outside of the ordinance. Plenty of parking is in place, and the road there on South Shore, there's plenty of line of sight, visibility. It's a good location to have cars pulled out, and we're not talking about a ton of cars. At 3 bedrooms, you're looking at about 6 people total occupancy between the 2 units for a rental. This is not anything high density. We have apartments next door that are going to have a higher density than what this would include. And then I also wanted to reiterate that private road access. So Sail Away Lane runs behind this. It goes around the porthole and then back and connects in to the City of Bloomington property. It actually is owned by the City of Bloomington. And as such, it's cutting that off from being a quiet private residence lot. Short-term rental tenants, people that are there for a weekend or a week, are much more open to the extra noise and foot traffic and vehicle traffic that will occur on that access road than if it's a single-family residence that you're living in all the time. That's just not what anybody wants to have, is South Shore Drive on one side of them and the dock access on the other side of them. But it is very convenient and a good location for a rental, and has been for decades. And so we're really just looking to continue what the property's been used on. So.
Do my colleagues have questions for Ms. Moss or Ms. Mitchell?
Just confirm what I think has been said. That is, this has been continuously used as level rental, short-term for many, many years. But the way the ordinance was written, if that had been started 7 months earlier, it would be automatic.
If we could prove that it had been started 7 months earlier, what it comes down to is the previous owner bought it in July, and we have no way of getting or seeing how it was used prior to that. So it's not even that we're saying it wasn't used as that before then, it's that we cannot meet the burden of proof required for the grandfathering.
Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't.
Exactly.
Nobody knows for sure.
Because that's prior to 97,
You've only got records going back to 97.
Exactly. July, I believe, correct? July. So, you're welcome.
But didn't you also tell us that the ordinance says that if there's any interruption in that service for 6 months or longer, the grandfathering goes kaput? Didn't I hear you say that?
That is correct.
Which really rough rule. I mean, that's a rough one right there.
And at this point, because of this discovery in 2022, we've been in that state because my client's abiding by the law at this point. So, yeah.
I have one question, and that I'm asking it both of you and of Mr. Schilling and of staff. If we vote to approve this use variance, would you be in opposition to our combining the other two variances with this in our request for approval if that comes about? Or would you want to?
We would be fine with that being all combined if that is acceptable to council.
We just want to, we don't know what we'll hear from the public yet, but if there are members of the public who are in opposition to this petition, you'll have an opportunity to have a 5-minute rebuttal, but and we would revisit then that question of whether or not we combine these variance requests.
Sounds
Okay.
good. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to turn now to the public. Are there members of the public who are in favor of this petition who would like to speak? If so, whoops. If you're online, would you kindly raise your virtual hand? Are there members of the public who would like to speak in opposition to this petition? If so, please raise your virtual hand. Okay, and then I turn to my colleagues here and see if you have further discussion and/or a motion.
I appreciate the factual content that you presented, and I suspect you're right that very few people live at Lake Lemon year-round. I suspect that is a unique scenario. I understand that aspect.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I expect our staff to be sticklers. That's their job, is to say, it doesn't meet the criteria, and a lot of the time we think the criteria are right, but sometimes the criteria don't seem to fit the facts. And from my perspective, the criteria don't seem to fit the facts of this. Certainly the fact that it has not been occupied since you were told not to occupy it shouldn't be held against you guys.
Yeah.
Because you're just doing what we say, and doing what we say should not be a catch-22. We know with high level of confidence that this has been used in this manner for many years, and given the nature of the construction, it was probably, from my perspective, used for that purpose before. So,
or it could have been a unit for a mother-in-law or a child. That's so common with those duplexes. Yeah, it's possible.
I've driven out there in winter and in summer, and I've seen that, it is kind of not very highly populated. But that being said, in order to approve this variance, I myself don't see that it would be injurious to the public health or the general welfare of the community, and that it wouldn't harm the use or the value of the surrounding properties, and that the need for the variance is kind of peculiar to the property. I mean, it's right there by the porthole, and Ms. Mitchell so eloquently described, how useful it could be to bands that are playing there, and how tourists who are there may not mind the noise, and then they have the 7 children who could use it, and this gives them a little bit more flexibility. And so I think that there would be an unnecessary hardship given this particular property's location and its historical use, and I don't think it interferes with the comprehensive plan. But I'd like to hear from you. Do you agree with that, or am I alone?
I agree with that and move to approve variance 24-48A. Wait a minute, let me take that back for a minute. I think I'm comfortable hearing all of these since nobody's opposed it, and then having one vote on all of them. So I move that we proceed to hear 24-48B.
But we could approve them without hearing it because they've consented. We could do 48A, B, and C, and then go home before it gets too
Oh, my goodness. I do appreciate, too, that you've made the point that that dock is close and that foot traffic. If a family lived there, they would find that highly annoying to have that traffic going back and forth in all stages, I would think. They've been to the bar, they've been to the band, they've been to the catfish.
Now they're not
Anything.
drunk driving.
Anything.
They're not
Yes.
drunk driving.
Yeah.
But, the other variances, staff recommended approval, and I believe in them.
Are you making a motion?
But I still think we have to vote on it. And
Yes.
if you're saying we can dispense with the
Yes.
evidence, we would routinely.
They agreed, and the public didn't, I mean, do we have any reason, Mr. Schilling, that we would circumvent any public rights? Let me just do this and ask, are there members of the public who are in opposition to the cabin design standards variance to Chapter 811 or the Mitchell front yard setback variance to Chapter 805-1? If so, please raise your virtual hand. Okay, so that being said, we could go forward with a combined motion if you would be so kind.
I move.
For the record, no one from the virtual public raised a hand?
Yes, that's
Okay.
right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or in the building. There's nobody in the building who spoke in opposition either. So
Yes.
I want to complete the record by saying not only was it nobody online, but also nobody in the room has expressed any opposition. In light of the facts that have been presented, I move that we approve variances 24-48A, B, and C for the reasons stated by the distinguished.
Thank you.
Do we need to enumerate that in more detail, that motion? Is that sufficient?
I can repeat it when I do the vote.
I like that. I'll second that because you're going to repeat it.
Okay. The motion and second is to approve VAR-24-48A, which is the tourist home or cabin use variance to Chapter 811. VAR-24-48B, the tourist home or cabin development standard or design standard to Chapter 811-6J. And VAR-24-48C, Mitchell front yard setback design or development standard to Chapter 805-1. A vote yes is a vote to approve all 3 variances. Pamela Davidson.
Thank you for so beautifully restating that. Yes.
Margaret Clemens.
Yes.
Guy Loftman.
Yes.
Okay, so that motion is approved 3-0.
Thank you. Thank you for working so well with us and our staff and for abiding by our rules. We really appreciate your sincerity and what you'll add to the community. Thank you.
And for improving the property. It looks like you've done some nice work there.
Y'all come stay.
Yeah.
I might come stay there. Yeah,
Give the grandkids a discount.
yeah.
Free, that's right.
Thank you.
Fair enough.
Free.
Chelsea, it's
Free.
good to see
It's
you
too funny.
again. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye. Take care.
Motion to adjourn?
Is there anything else?
No, I do. If
something
Dee
else.
is still going to be serving, I'll make this announcement next time, but I just want to say I really appreciated Dee's service to the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Yes.
Her term on the Plan Commission ended on January 1st, 2025. She did not seek renewal of that 4-year term. So we are awaiting a new commissioner's appointment to the Plan Commission, and then the Plan Commission next month at their February meeting will elect or appoint somebody already on the Plan Commission or newly appointed to the Plan Commission to the Board of Zoning Appeals. So that happens the night before this next meeting. So hopefully on the first Wednesday of next month, we will have all 5 Board of Zoning Appeals members.
Right. Yes, I second Dee's fantastic service in so many ways in this community, countless ways.
Countless ways, and I have to say personally, that I really appreciated her expertise. She brought such wonderful views to the Board of Zoning Appeals and considered things I had not thought of. And she was a cherished and enlightened member of our BZA.
Remarkable knowledge of the county,
Yes, yeah,
of the land.
that's right.
Yes.
We are blessed with a lot of people like that here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
you
you,
all.
everyone.
If
Thanks.
you want a motion to adjourn.
She moved.
Okay.
I moved.
And I
Thank you.
second that.
All right,
Thank you.
thanks. Bye-bye.